Shall we dive in then?
Yeah.
Happy to do so. Brilliant. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being with us here on this slightly drizzly Wednesday morning where I am. So my name is James, and I work with Feedback, who have been the organisation running the Gleaning Network for since about 2012. So we've got about 8 years experience with Gleaning. I'll just very quickly allow my colleagues to introduce themselves as well. I prefer to go by he, him, and I can just pass over to Phil quickly.
Hi guys, I'm Phil. Like James, I work for Feedback. I'm based in Brighton on the south coast, which is currently very wet, but otherwise a nice place to be. Very pleased to see you all today. And I'll hand over to Maddie.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Maddie. I'm based in Bristol. I was involved in setting up the Southwest Gleaning Network some years ago, and have just come back into the team recently to help with these webinars. So it's really nice to be here. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
And I'm going to share my screen now so you can see the presentation. But you should also be able to see some of the faces of people talking whilst the presentation's up.
And just to say that we will be recording this for those who weren't able to make it. Does anyone not want to be recorded? Does anyone not object to it being recorded? Okay, that's fantastic. I will unpause the recording now. Thank you. Great, just got a couple of others joining. And we'll have a chance to introduce ourselves to each other more fully in a moment.
Right. Okay, so yes, welcome to our first online community-led gleaning training session. Through this, we hope to give you all a set of tools that are going to help you kind of address whatever specific need is that you've identified in your communities for gleaning. And this is the first of 4 sessions that we're going to be running between August and September. So if you could just pop over to the next slide, please, Phil.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just say, sorry, James, can I just interject at this point? So people might be seeing on their screens, everyone's faces may be running down the right-hand side. If people could mute themselves, well, if they're not talking, that would be great. And just in terms of visuals, yeah, if you've got everybody running down the right-hand side of your screen at the moment with screen sharing, if you want, if it's in the way of what you're reading and seeing on the slide, you can literally sort of click on the top bar of the strip where people's faces are and drag it down over to the bottom left, get it out of the way. Or you can also minimize it so you can just see the speaker using those little boxes along the top of the black bar at the top, if that makes sense. So you can move the faces of people around so they're not in the way of the slides.
Great. Thank you, Maddie. Okay, so just a brief rundown of today's session. So we've just done a little welcome. On the next slide, I'm going to just talk you through what you can expect from the other sessions that are following in the coming weeks. I'm going to tell you a little bit about gleaning and how we perceive its kind of benefit from an organizational perspective and some of our experience, why we think it particularly is relevant in the context of what's been going on globally in 2020. And then what we really want is this to be an opportunity for all of you as individuals or groups to have the opportunity to kind of share what you feel might be some of the key barriers or challenges to you setting up or developing your gleaning hub. And it might be that today is the day that we find out what those key barriers are. But we're hoping that just through some conversations together, we'll be able to sort of highlight some of the things that may come up. And so we'll do that as kind of a participatory breakout session. And I'm going to hand over to Phil, and we're going to have like a little bit of a introduction on sort of some of the causes that you might find why food waste is occurring on farms. a little bit more context there around COVID-19. And then we're going to have a second breakout session kind of related, trying to work out ways in which we might be able to overcome some of those common challenges. And we've got a couple of experienced cleaning coordinators with us as well that we should be able to get some insight from there as well. Great, and then we'll do a little Q&A and a chance for a quick chat. We've started a little bit late today, so I am going to try and just whip through some of the presentation. Next slide, please, Phil. Cool, so I'll pass over to Maddie and she can quickly take us through some of the housekeeping.
Thanks. Yeah, so you'll see along the bottom of your screen, many of you may be familiar with using Zoom, so and may know these things already, but along the bottom you'll see there's an icon that says chat. If you click on there, you can type things in there, any comments as we go along. Also, any questions that come up as you go along, if you either jot them down on a piece of paper, it's quite useful to have some pen and paper with you for this session, but also if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat. If you just start that by typing in the word question, that would be great. If you want to speak directly to address a point, there's a raise hand function along the bottom as well. Yeah, so there is opportunity there'll be presentation parts, and then there's opportunity for small group discussion. So we'll get to hear from each other, and hopefully everyone will have a chance to discuss and raise the things that they need to. I think we also are really happy to stay. We'll be staying here after 11:30 if there are any questions that haven't been able to be answered in the time. So just quite conscious of time and what we're fitting in. So unless you need to go at 11:30 on the dot, we will be here to discuss things with you for a bit longer. Yeah, and we will say we're doing the recording and we'll be saving the chat at the end and can share that with you as well. I've put the Eventbrite link in the chat already, in case you decide that you want to sign up for future sessions if you haven't already. Yeah, I think that's it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Maddie. Just to welcome John, we have just whipped through some of the like a little bit of housekeeping and sort of an overview of the session, so you haven't missed any of the detail yet. But one further thing I wanted to do just was to recognize a little bit about the just the space that we're working in within Gleaning is a really it's a really important thing to just recall, that obviously some of us here will be working on kind of the front line of issues around food insecurity. A lot of the motivations for us being here are quite personal and quite sensitive, and it's also worth considering that everybody has kind of different motivations for getting into gleaning and why it's important. So I just wanted to just highlight the need to treat all of the participants with respect and to sort of give everybody the opportunity to hear their views and make sure that their voices are heard. So just wanted to highlight that. And also, if we have any further accessibility requirements, if I need to be speaking more slowly or more clearly, please let me know if at any point if that's the case. And just to say, of course, yeah, we'll be circulating the recording and trying to put any key points in the chat box when we summarize. But aside from that, do just let us know in the chat or message privately if there's anything that needs to be kind of repeated or worked through. I'm hearing a bit of chatter on the like sort of some noise through my speakers. I don't know if anyone else can hear that. Okay, that might just be my speaker. Oh, it's gone. Okay, apologies. Next slide, please, Phil. Fantastic. Okay, so I wanted to give everybody the opportunity to do a quick whip round. So if you could stop sharing the screen, Phil, so we can all see each other. So I'm just going to ask, we've got a maximum of 45 seconds each. We're going to have to be really tight on this. But I just wanted to give everybody the opportunity to introduce themselves, their name, if they're affiliated with an organization. If not, that's fine, then you're just acting as an individual, not a problem at all. But just some reflections, also where you're based geographically, and just a little bit of thoughts about why, what brought you here today, what you hope to learn, what sort of level of experience you have as well. So if we could start with Kevin Matthew.
A charity here called Community Food Initiative. So I'm here actually. Can you hear me? Is that...
Sorry, there was just a little bit of lag with the technology for a moment there. I don't know if you can speak a little bit closer into the mic. Sorry.
Fine. So I work for a charity named Community Food Initiative North East in Aberdeen, Scotland. We essentially, it's like a food bank, but we do lots of projects. There's a few of us on the station, like Best Chef.
We've lost you, Kevin. I think your signal's down or something.
Yeah, sorry about that, Kevin. Maybe if you'd be okay to pop it in the chat box instead, that would be
no problem.
Sorry you didn't get the chance to speak there. Hopefully that's just a temporary glitch. I might have to pass on. Really sorry about that. Pass on to the other Kevin.
Hello everyone, can you hear me? Good. My name's Kevin Marsh. I'm working with an organisation called Treberving Community Hall. It's a small community hall organisation based in Cornwall, but we're developing with other organisations and voluntary groups we're working with a network in Cornwall of what we're calling community larders. They're basically pop-up stalls to distribute surplus food from supermarkets, Fair Share, and a variety of other sources. And as part of developing that network, there's obviously a synergy with gleaning, and any food that can be gathered through the gleaning process could be distributed through things like the community larders, community fridges, and all the other initiatives that are there to get food out. So interested to learn how it works, and potentially matching up community larders with local gleaning groups would be fantastic if we can go that way in the future.
Thanks, Kevin. I'm going to nominate, sorry, I don't know if it's Sarah or Sarah. Oh, let me just unmute you.
There we go. It's Sarah.
Thank you.
Well, I'm retired, probably twice as old as most of you here. I first became interested in food waste as an issue probably 5 years ago, and was kind of presented with Feedback Global as an organisation, and happened to be in Brighton when you did a feeding of the 5,000 event in October 2015, and was very taken with the whole thing. At that time I lived in Guildford, so wasn't actually able to be part of a gleaning network, because everywhere that was offered was at least an hour's drive away, and I thought, my goodness, that's not very good for the environment. So I haven't actually gleaned, but I have been involved in putting a food waste feast on at my church in Guildford through the help of Tesco's. So this kind of gleaning is one way of getting at the food waste, and as it contributes to kind of global warming and all of that, it's a good idea to prevent that if we can.
Thanks, Sarah. Are you still in Guildford?
No, I'm down in Poole now, in Dorset.
Cool. Okay.
And I think my nearest network hub is Southampton. So again, that's not exactly close by. So
it would be great if the two of you that have just spoken would also, in your own time, just pop a quick summary of that in the chat as well, if that's possible.
Oh gosh.
If not, that's fine. I mean, we've taken notes as well. So,
All right.
but just to give a
Yeah, I am capturing some stuff. So
brilliant. Thank you, Maddie.
Okay.
Can I pass over to Claire Cater?
Hi, I'm Claire. I'm from Birmingham. I have no experience in gleaning so far, but it's something that I'm really interested in doing. And as far as I can tell, there's nothing going on in Birmingham. So I thought, why not start something? I'm not working with an organisation, but I know there are lots of things going on in Birmingham that could really benefit from it. So I just want to learn more, really. And that's me.
Brilliant. Thank you. So I'll pass over to Kako.
Thanks, James. My name's Kako. I lived in London a couple of years ago, and while I was there, I volunteered with James and Phil at Feedback. I live in Australia, and I'm joining you from Melbourne today. I have spent the last, since I've been back, trying to set up a gleaning system here. We got so close, and we were literally a week away from hitting the fields when the COVID restrictions came into force, and so they've been very strict here, and we've had to put everything on hold. So I am here for motivation and inspiration.
Hopefully you're in the right place. Thank you, Kako. Charmaine, can I pass to you?
Hi, I'm Charmaine. I'm in Folkestone, Kent. I work for EKC Group, Folkestone College, teaching business and enterprise. So we started a hub last academic year because I wanted to introduce the students to gleaning as part of our community weeks, which we have two annual community weeks per year. So I wanted to get the students involved in that as part of the community week, but as well as learning about the business environment. So different sectors, farming is a business and it's a sector, primary sector, and the challenges that come up in terms of waste and how that impacts them economically, etc., etc. So that was why I started up the group, the hub in the college. I've been a community gleaner as an individual for 3 years now. So I kind of had experience and knew how great it was and wanted to bring it to the college. We've done 4 gleans, 2 of which were training gleans. And yeah, I'm just here today to find out how we will move forward, because especially at me working with students, I'm under quite a few restrictions at the moment. So just, yeah, hopefully get some inspiration of how we'll be able to take this forward under the current circumstances.
Fantastic. Thank you, Charmaine. I'll pass over to Nele.
Hello, I'm Nele. I'm German. I'm an international development student with major in sustainable value chains, and I'm currently in Aberdeen doing my internship for Seafine, so together with Kevin and Rebecca.
Fantastic. Thank you. Great. Lisa, can I pass to you?
Hi there, it's good to be with you guys this morning. I'm from Johannesburg in South Africa, and my interest is, I'm basically working for a faith-based organization, and we're really looking at sustainability with regard to providing food to our community, and also just trying to go into, so it's a bit of both. It's food gardening, and we're really just trying to find ways to connect our community. So gleaning, yeah, just for me, it provides a lot of solutions. So I'm really just interested in learning and yeah, getting some advice from all of you guys to see how it works and how we can upskill our community, and also just to get to just provide a base of unity for our community to get involved. Yeah, so that's pretty much. And I'm also a strong environmentalist, really just trying to look after the earth. So it's, yeah, a variety of interests.
Thank you, Lisa, and welcome. Glad to see we've got a sort of truly international today. Yeah, hopefully it will be useful for you. Could I pass to John?
Sorry. Hello, it's nice to be here. Feels good to see you all. It's John, and I founded Ubuntu Multicultural Center with a view to promote community cohesion and empower communities. And of recent, in the pandemic, we've concentrated on giving out food parcels to our community, and mainly focusing on Black communities because we thought they were kind of not knowing what to do in this pandemic. And I have to be honest, I don't know much of gleaning. It's a new word to me. Originally, I'm from Uganda, Africa. I don't think we do that kind of thing in Africa, but I might be wrong. But so I'm here to learn, and please use those words sparingly. So explain to me what those words mean as you go on. But yeah, I'm here to learn. I'm open-minded. I'm really willing to take in everything. Yep, that's me for now.
John, could I just ask you whereabouts you are?
I am actually based in Middlesbrough.
Okay.
That's it's northeast of England, near Newcastle. You've got Sunderland, you've got Redcar, so just in there.
Thank you.
That's where I am.
Fantastic. Thank you, John, and welcome. And I think we have Rebecca next.
Hi there. I was keeping my video off because it seems like we've got a little bit of connection issues at our end. But I'm Rebecca, and I work with Kevin and with Neela. We're with the Community Food Initiatives Northeast, and like Kevin was saying before it got a bit jumpy, we're essentially a food bank, but we do a lot of other things extending from that. And I'm actually totally new to gleaning, so I'm here and I'm quite excited to know more about how it works.
Cool, thank you, Rebecca. Welcome, Petra. Hi, just to say, hello. I think, yeah, we had a little bit of, we had a couple of links that got sent out that were seemingly the wrong ones. So apologies for any stress that might have caused logging on. We've just been going around and doing some introductions. So I thought maybe I'd give you perfectly timed. If you could just let us know your name, any organization that you're affiliated with, and yeah, what brought you here today, and whereabouts are you based?
Is that me?
Yes, today is you, yeah.
Okay,
sorry,
great.
Everyone else is gone.
Okay, hi, I can only see you, so I don't know who else is in here. But yeah, there should be 3 of us, myself, Karen, and Susie, although I think Susie is kind of representing 2 different organizations. We are all part of the Hornbeam Community Center and Cafe in Walthamstow. So I'm cooking usually, whereas I think Karen and Susie are kind of more front of house. Yeah, it's pretty much all volunteer run, and we are cooking based on food donations, which we are receiving once a week on Fridays. But yeah, I think there is a curiosity to figure out what other possibilities there are to source produce. I don't know if Karen and Susie are here as well and would like to add anything to this.
I think Susie's just come into the chat. Welcome, Susie.
Cool, okay.
Apologies for any connectivity problems that we had there and sending out links that weren't working and all the rest of it. So Petra's just given us some really useful background on your work at the Hornbeam. But yeah, we were just, maybe if you could just very quickly introduce yourself, your name, and kind of what interests you about gleaning kind of as part of the Hornbeam and what brought you here.
Hello. So yeah, I volunteer at the Hornbeam, but I'm also involved in some local work, mutual aid work, and we're talking about trying to set up a cooperative potentially and we're providing about 80 meals 3 times a week at the moment to the local community in Waltham Forest. So gleaning could be a way of being able to, you know, continue providing that, you know, in a cost-effective way. And also the, you know, there's the environmental benefits. But I'm completely new to the gleaning side of things, really. So it's just seeing whether it's feasible. And I suppose being in London, we're quite disconnected from, you know, the food supply chains. So yeah, I'm interested in seeing what we can do about that.
Thank you, Susie. Well, luckily you're not alone in being new to gleaning in this call. You'll be pleased to hear, perhaps. Can I just pass over to Stephen from Kent?
Hello, my name's Steve Wakeford. I'm from Deal With It, which is a local transition group here in Deal and Kent. We've been going for about 14 years. We organise a variety of actions to deal with climate crisis, things like beach cleans, community gardens. We also grow beer, which is very popular. So we have a community hop growing project. We've been gleaning since the Gleaning Networks really started. Personally, I've been doing it for about 6 years. Last year, we became one of the hub groups in part of East Kent, and working with colleagues in Hythe, which is a sister organisation about 40 miles away. We've been coordinating gleans in Kent since April. So far, we've done about, this year, about 12, all working within COVID restrictions and things. To date, we distribute food to around about 12 different community organisations. So we've got 3 food banks in our district, so food goes to them, community kitchens, community cafes, and churches, and a whole range of other things. So it's kind of taken us a little while. We've only been distributing food like this for the last 18 months, really. Before that, we were working with feedback, basically working with Felix and Fair Share.
Fantastic, thank you, Stephen. So I think Joy is next. Apologies if you've had any issues connecting Joy this morning. I have a feeling that was actually our fault rather than anyone else's. But just very quickly, we're just getting everybody to introduce themselves. So just sort of less than a minute with just your name, an organisation that you're affiliated with, and what brought you here today, and if you've got any previous gleaning experience. Oh, I'm not quite hearing you, Joy. I don't know if there's an audio connection.
Should be bottom left. There might be a mute or unmute button. You can't get it to work, Joy.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's got to do with the earphones that really aren't up to the job. I work for Bromsgrove and Redditch Welcomes Refugees, and we welcome Syrians that have come into the country over the last 5 years. And now we're helping people that have come during COVID that are held up in a local hotel as well. What we've done over the last 5 years is to make our money by gleaning and making what we call refugee juice and selling it to raise funds so that we can help people. And it's grown and grown, and we're really selling about 2,000 or 3,000 bottles, I think, this year. So it's been quite a good money spinner for us, and we want to continue to do that. So we only glean once a year, and we glean apples. And anything that we don't use, we send to food bank. And
I was lucky enough to taste some of that juice. I recognise you from the Glean last year, I think.
Yes,
Right? Oh, yeah. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Fantastic. I believe everybody has had a chance to introduce themselves now. Tell me if I'm wrong. I am quite conscious of time. It's really great that we've had a bit of a chance to sort of understand where everyone's coming from. Karen, I don't believe we've heard from you, have we?
No, just had a bit of a problem joining, but thanks.
Apologies for that.
I'm connected to the Hornbeam Centre, like Petra, who I assume introduced herself before
Petra and Susie, yep.
So I'm not going to repeat what she probably said before I joined in the interest of time, but I'm involved with the same organisation.
Could you just tell me where the Hornbeam is again? I didn't catch that part.
It's in Walthamstow, so northeast London.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you everyone. Phil, could you share your screen again to get us back to the presentation? Beautiful. Okay, so this is just a very quick overview of what we're going to be covering over the course. So that is today's session, which we're just going to whip through, try and get a bit more of context of why gleaning is important in sort of 2020 in the context of COVID-19. And then next week, we're going to be looking a bit more closely at sort of mobilizing, coordinating volunteers, working on distribution, how to set up kind of community distribution sort of hub. And that's going to be quite an interesting one because it seems that we've got some people that are more already working in community food projects and are interested in accessing more food, and others that are interested in supporting those organizations. So there'll be some really great discussions there, I think. And then the third session, which will be our 2 weeks on Thursday, is going to be speaking to the need to sort of build close working relationships with farms and farmers, and we can go through some of what we've experienced over the sort of 8 years of gleaning. For both of those sessions, we're going to be bringing in some guests that have either are farmers or have experienced gleaning before. And then we are going to, on the fourth session, just try and focus a little bit more on how to build a resilient kind of community network. So that's going to be an opportunity for us to sort of communicate a bit more deeply with each other and work out how we can sort of best share kind of knowledge, tools and resources kind of across the new gleaning network. Okay, so next slide, please, Phil. So I am going to try and whip through these quite quickly. We can obviously make the presentation available afterwards, but I'm conscious if I'm going a bit too fast, please do slow me down. But I just want to try and get us through so we can start doing some more of the participatory stuff. So the way that we've always seen gleaning, it's the 4 Ps, we like to call it. So it's taking positive action, it's purposeful, it's participatory, and it's practical. Something that 4 things that we often don't get the opportunity to kind of work towards. And for us, it's always been an opportunity to try and increase access to fresh, healthy produce for a wide variety of people. So this is it's an activity that tries to ensure that it's addressing kind of issues around food insecurity. And we do that by trying to support redistribution organizations, community cafes, places in both rural and inner city areas that often structurally lack access to being able to get enough kind of nutritious fresh fruit and veg in their diets. There are other ways of looking at it as well. In terms of work on farms that we do, it's we often have volunteers that have told us about the sort of significant increases in well-being that they've had from spending time outside. Anyone who's had opportunities to visit farms and spend time in nature will be able to attest to the well-being benefits that can have. So we've trained groups in the past that work more around in the context of kind of ecotherapy. So I think it's particularly relevant to the work that Joy has been doing. Not only are they raising money for resettling young refugees in Bromsgrove and Redditch as well, but they're on the Glean that I went with, and there were a couple of refugees that have recently been resettled that were having sort of one of their first experiences in the British countryside. And that's something we want to actively promote as much as possible. Feedback has always tried to use gleaning as a kind of a tool with which we can talk about systemic issues within the food supply chain. I'm going to expand on that in a little bit more often, but yeah, there is opportunity to make significant chunks of the food that would be wasted on farms not wasted and get that used, and obviously that has an ability to sort of have a positive impact on the environment as well. related to point 2 about kind of facilitating an experience in nature, people that come gleaning have the opportunity to learn a little bit about where their food comes from and how it's historically been grown in this country and further abroad, further afield. And it gives us the opportunity to sort of understand some of the kind of intrinsic knowledge that goes into that, and understand the sort of size of the supply chains when you're on a farm that's as big as some of the farms that you may end up visiting. As I said before, it's a way of telling the story of food waste and all of the kind of actors that take place within that, and where there are sort of structural imbalances of power. Okay, so I'd like to move on to the next slide. So this is kind of what gleaning is not. It is not a silver bullet for food poverty in the slightest. We found that gleaning speaks to 2 very deep-rooted systemic problems, and one of those is the fact that food insecurity and poverty is deeply entrenched in the UK, particularly in the context that we're experiencing now, on the back of 10 years of government cuts and austerity. That's like massively affected people's ability to, one, be able to afford fresh produce, but then particularly in the context of COVID-19, we've all seen the sort of shots of empty shelves in supermarkets and the rest of it. And the other thing that gleaning really speaks to is where the power within the grocery retail sector really lies. So from our experience with gleaning, we've had a lot of experience talking to farmers who have had been susceptible to the sort of whimsy, I would say, of the grocery retail supply chain, when you have about 85% of the grocery trade flowing through around 4 or 5 supermarkets. They have much more of an ability to dictate prices and how the supply chain models work. And often, as a result of this, it's either consumers or, in our experience, farmers that struggle as a result of this. I want to give Phil the opportunity to talk a little bit about food waste on farms later, so I'm not going to go into too much detail for that. It's also worth recognising that this is often a last resort for growers who are in a really tricky position where they might be unable to shift some of the produce that they have. And we've dealt with a lot of farmers in the past who are kind of on the verge of going out of business and have really struggled, and through the goodness of their heart have made the produce available to be gleaned for charitable initiatives. But it's, as a result of that, it's not always going to be looked on as sort of the solution for farmers. And this is why we always try and explore, kind of use these opportunities to explore alternative supply chains as well. So we've got down here leftover food for leftover people. And the reason we've put that is because we want to make it very clear that the produce that we get from gleaning is often top quality. It's not rotten, moldy kind of food that's been left out of the harvest for a long time. You know, this is often the best quality produce that one can get. And there are various reasons why that hasn't made it to the market. And we also want to clarify that this is not something that we want to see just servicing the people that are kind of the most needy. This food should be available to everyone, and we don't want it to kind of deeply entrench kind of perceptions that people may have of people in poverty. And last of all, it can be pretty hard work, so it's not everyone's idea of a fun day out. Next slide, please. Okay, so just a little bit of context about feedback and why we're here delivering these webinars, I guess. So gleaning was a project that we started in 2012, and we really wanted to use it as a means to highlight some of the systemic issues in the food system that I've just gone over. So we've run over 400 gleaning days in that time, and those are mostly in the areas that we've been operating are Kent, Sussex, kind of around Bristol and the west of England, and then kind of around Lancashire, Manchester, and kind of northeast. Through that, we've engaged over 5,000 community volunteers. We've redirected over 560 tonnes of produce. We've worked with over 60 farmers across the country and worked with a wide variety of charities, community groups, some of those directly and some of them through larger redistribution organisations such as Fair Share, the Felix Project, Community Food Enterprise, etc. And next, please. We've touched upon some of this a little bit, and some of you would have mentioned this as well in your introduction as well, that there's a real need for us to become more connected with our food, and the way that we interact with our food system now generally, or that we're asked to, is from a very passive place, whereas I see gleaning as an opportunity for people to be very active with regards to connecting with their food, taking action for the environment, connecting with other people, working in a team, and often getting that food to people that are in quite serious positions with regards to food insecurity. And as I mentioned before, the kind of well-being and sort of ecotherapy context that can come from that. It's no bad thing to be spending a day out with the sun on your face. Not that it always pans out that way. Okay, next slide, please. Fantastic. So a little bit of context about how we got to where we are now. We realized that, and I think it's been evidenced by hearing all of you speak with your introductions, we have a huge number of very local contexts in the UK, by which I mean that in every region, every town, every community organisation, there's a different need that's being addressed. There's a very specific context that is very relevant to one place that might not be so relevant to another. And the more we became aware of that, and the more we started working with these community organisations, the more we realised it made a lot less sense for gleaning to be something that feedback was sort of keeping to ourselves, I guess, would be one way of putting it. That we in the spirit of kind of open sourcing these resources, we wanted to sort of try and highlight the fact that there have been other organisations gleaning as much as possible, and try and share some of our resources that we've been, and sort of experience and expertise that we've been picking up over the years. So last year we started a project. We ran a year-long project to train up as many community groups as we could as possible. And this is kind of a natural extension of that. And we also created our online gleaning toolkit, which goes into a lot of detail about some of the issues that we're going to be sort of talking through over the next month. Okay, next slide. So it's important, obviously, for us to highlight, and I think that's something that a lot of us have brought up as something that we'd like to get out a little bit today, is how gleaning has changed drastically, or how the need for it has become highlighted as a result of the current situation with COVID-19. And I think it's obviously important to, as you can see the second point on the slide there, it says that food insecurity has been exacerbated in the UK by the likes of seeing empty shelves in supermarkets, people's incomes disappearing overnight, people having to shield the fact that certain communities have been disproportionately affected by the outbreak of the virus. And I think the other thing it's important to point out that this didn't start a lot of problems. I believe that it's kind of highlighted a lot of the what are already quite deeply rooted structural inequalities in this country and further abroad. In terms of why gleaning is more relevant from a farmer's perspective, obviously the view of the empty shelves in the supermarket speaks to a much more significant kind of systemic issue within the food system. We were speaking to farmers within the first week of lockdown who used to supply 100% of their trade was going to restaurants, and they overnight would have to their trade completely fell off a cliff. And what we realized about that was that there were opportunities to glean where there wouldn't have otherwise been. I mean, it's obviously unfortunate because that's in the context of farmers potentially going out of business. So that's something I'd kind of want to highlight to everyone today, that's kind of something that we've been very mindful of, that while there may be more opportunities to glean in the current climate, the effects that people have seen on their trade as farmers have been quite significant. And there's a real potential. There's potential sensitivities there when engaging with farmers. So that's something I'd like to kind of point out at this stage. What we have done as feedback is we've managed to revise some of our health and safety requirements with regards to how we can run gleaning days given social distancing requirements. What I'm not going to do right now is go into too much detail on that, But after this, I'm going to send round. What I'd like to do is make available kind of the template for our risk assessment and some of the information that we've got, which we share with farmers in advance of gleaning days to ensure that they feel more comfortable about letting people onto the farm in a current situation. Okay, so I'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so I've done quite a lot of talking there. I'm mindful of the time, so I think Maddie and Phil, I'm going to propose what we'll do with this breakout room is we'll take a 10-minute break now, but during that 10-minute break, I'd like people to have just an opportunity to write down a couple of reflections on the question that's on the screen right now. And then what we do is when we reconvene from the break, we'll go straight into our breakout rooms. Does that seem like a sensible way of dealing with the fact that we're a bit behind?
Can I interject?
Yes, of course.
I was wondering whether we might just forego the break and just carry on, because it feels like we've sort of just got in a flow. So I'm wondering whether people want to just carry on, or whether people need a break.
Phil, can you unshare your screen so we can see everyone and people can give us thumbs up or flag or?
So proposal being to just carry on. Okay.
Or if anyone in particular feels like they really don't want to, they can flag up. I'm seeing more or less thumbs up across the board.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Virtual
Brilliant.
thumbs as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Maddie. That is a very good point. I'm glad we seem to have come to some sort of consensus.
Yeah. So I've put in the chat the sort of question that will form. I'll put you into breakout rooms, groups of 4-ish. It'll be for almost 10 minutes, maybe. What are we looking at, James? 8?
Yeah,
let's
say
something like that. So not a great deal, but just make sure that everyone in your group has a chance to share. I'll alert you. You'll get a sign up when there's just a minute left. So the sort of prompt is: what are the key barriers and challenges, perceived or actual, to setting up or developing your group in your context? So I'm going to randomly put you into breakout rooms. You'll get a pop-up box and just say, yes, enter the breakout room.
Just to interject, Maddie, if that's all right, it might be worth separating Susie, Petra, and the other person that's with the hornbeam, just because they will probably benefit more from.
Okay. That means I have to do the whole thing manually, which is a whole.
Oh, really?
Other
oh, sorry. Forget I said anything.
But maybe if you do all end up in the same group from Hornbeam, you can jump out of that room and I can try and put you in another one. I think you can leave the room and then I can reassign you. Does that sound okay?
Cool.
All right, thanks.
But just as a point of clarification, what I'd like you to do is individually on your own, just spend maybe 2 minutes just writing down a couple of these, what you perceive to be the barriers or issues, just as a bit of quiet reflection. Then you'll be assigned into your groups. And then what I'd like you to do is have in mind that one of you in that group is going to be nominated to sort of share back to the collective when we come back. But yeah, you'll be in groups of 4 or 5, probably 4, and then it would just be an opportunity just go around in a bit of a carousel and give everybody the opportunity to share, and then whatever key themes that you have coming out, that would be what we'd like to share back. Okay, so 2 minutes and then 8, so we're back here at 11:10.
Welcome back, everybody. I think everyone has pinged back through cyberspace into the group. That's fantastic. So I hope you had some good discussions. I know it's quite short period of time, intensive talk to each other. We're going to capture some of your feedback from your discussions in a second. James, Phil, was there anything you wanted to add?
Just to quickly ask if tech-wise that was okay for everyone. Anybody have any struggles?
That's good to know.
Okay, I'll take the silence as golden.
Brilliant.
Cool.
So if from your groups you could sort of perhaps nominate somebody to feedback in summary, or you can sort of chip in together. And it's just literally to sort of capture the headlines at this stage of challenges, and just so that we get a sense of what's coming up, because then we can take that into future sessions and unpack them more. So I'm going to share my screen, and then you'll see it's a kind of like a virtual board with post-its. So if we were all together, we'd have loads of post-its, wouldn't we? So this is the virtual version, and I'm just going to capture as you speak. So I'm just going to do that now. Okay, can everybody see that board with all the post-its on there? James, can you see that? I can only see you. Brilliant. So I'm just going to, oh, sorry. I'm just going to swing over here. So this is our, what I'll be typing into. So over to you, James.
Am I starting?
Or do you want to, yeah, or just bring people in group by group?
I don't actually know who the groups were.
That's all right.
Petra, you're on my screen. Had you nominated somebody from your group to share the findings?
Basically, I was chatting with Phil because I was in a group with Susie, so I came out of the group and wasn't able to join a new one. But yeah, I can tell you what Phil and I spoke about.
Please do, yeah.
Okay, cool. So I guess we were speaking about two issues. One being storage. So I think if the Hornbeam would consider to start gleaning and do that sort of self-organized in a way, then we would probably struggle finding space for it, because we are pretty much at capacity at the moment regarding the cold store, but also storage for dry goods, especially on Fridays when we actually do get our deliveries. So I saw it last Friday, and it was literally, there was not even a way into the cold store. So then Phil suggested that there would be a possibility, or how it's been solved in other places is that it's being distributed on the same day. But I think that brings up a question of, would we want to set up a group ourselves and then distribute to other organizations? Or does it make more sense if there is maybe a pre-existing London group who is then delivering to us as part of their routine? So that's one thing that we touched on. And then the second one was costs. Because the Hornbeam is run on donations at this point in time. And I know there was a fundraiser, but I'm not exactly sure where that's gone now. And I know that there has been a funding application probably a week ago. But yeah, basically the main income is our donations. So I think we are okay at the moment because of the volunteer input. But if there are things to consider, like renting a van and paying for petrol and whatever else may come up, I think that's definitely something to consider also. So kind of hard costs.
Great.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Petra. That is great. So maybe I could ask John from your group. Did you nominate somebody who wanted to share?
Yeah, he nominated Karen. I know where she is.
I just didn't know which John that was. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke of similar things. John actually raised the issue that finding produce that would interest his community can be challenging and needs some education so that people be enthusiastic about going and gleaning. But he thought that if that could be done, there would be a lot of people who'd be interested in taking part. And then the general ones about once you've got the produce, to have the structures in place to distribute or use the produce. So whether it goes into fruit juices or sauerkraut or whatever, or gets distribution, that's a major issue that Petra's already brought up. Specific for myself is location. We are in northeast London, so most of the opportunities for gleaning would mean quite a bit of travel, transport issues involved. Possibility that although people are enthusiastic about joining in as volunteers, when they get to the farm, the amount of hard work and grind it involves to do the work, it may be that the people would not expect it. So that's another issue that came up.
Great, thank you, Karen. So I'm not actually sure who was in which group. So Karen, can you nominate somebody that wasn't in your group?
Okay, let me have a look. Sorry, I have to. Claire, could you nominate somebody in your group?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk, but Stephen or Kevin, please jump in if I'm missing something. But we spoke about, so two of us have never done gleaning before, and Stephen's a pro. So we were just sort of hearing about his experience, and something that was highlighted for me that I hadn't even considered was public liability insurance. And if you're not operating under an organisation, how do I go about that? And also we were talking about the logistics of getting food out once you've gleaned it. Also personally for me, just it seems like there's a lot of organisation involved, so how best to build something up from scratch if you don't have like a regional coordinator, logistics of getting the word out there, getting volunteers. Yeah, I think that was everything we spoke about. I don't know if Kevin or Stephen have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I can say Steve pointed out that there was a building relationship with the farmer, you know, not just finding the farmer and the produce you want, but also building and maintaining that relationship with them is so important. And who is the lead contact with the farmer was an important thing to think of. The other bit was the transportation, which I think people have mentioned. So, you know, getting it just off the field to wherever your cars and vans might be parked is another thing. So lots of organisational things you need to think about on the farm. And then Steve mentioned that actually when recruiting volunteers, you do need, lots of people are happy to pick on the day, but you do need organisers as well. And that's always the tricky one to get the organisers.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot speaking to the need for a collaborative approach, that's for sure. Thanks, Kevin and Claire. Could I ask you to pass on to somebody else? And then if they've already gone, then they can pass on to somebody else.
Sarah?
I was part of Karen's group.
I
Pick
guess
someone else.
I guess our group could go. Joy or Charmaine, did you want to share?
I'm happy to share.
Great.
I also talked about the difficulty of getting people to take responsibility for the whole project, from organising the glean right through to the manufacture of the juice that we make, marketing, storage, and that being a big problem. And I think it's partly to do with confidence, but it's still something that needs addressing. And Charmaine, I think she really was talking about children taking part in gleans or young adults, and how the COVID has impacted on the ability of them to take part. And I'm interested in that as well, because we would like to get the scouting organisation involved. Possibly that's going to be better, because the families will get involved as well, and they can actually transport the children. I think that was the main thrust, the two things that mainly came up in our group.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I hope I've covered that for you, Charmaine.
Yeah, Charmaine, did you want to add anything?
Yes,
Charmaine?
thank you very much, Zoe. No, that was great. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, any groups that are yet to share? Someone can please jump in.
I don't think our group has shared, but a lot of what we talked about has been covered. I'm really glad someone else mentioned public liability insurance, because that has been the biggest challenge of the last year for us. And also, just, I guess I wanted to share my experience on approaching farmers, because there is no history and no organisations and nothing like it in Australia. And so when I was approaching people for funding and getting involved, it took a lot of explaining, and I was really worried about how farmers would react. But then I spent months over the summer cold calling farmers, and the responses were always consistently really positive.
That's really great to hear. I thought it was going to come out the other way, but brilliant. Anybody to add anything else from Carco's group? No, all good. Is that all of the groups have spoke then? I think it probably is. Brilliant. Thank you everyone for getting those thoughts down. It's hopefully it's going to be useful to be able to kind of see them visualized. So I'm going to just propose a quick revision of the plan thus far, in that we are slightly running out of time. I did want the opportunity to look at a second breakout in which we might explore some of this in a bit more detail, but I actually have a feeling that a better way to do that would be for us to, after we've shared some of the information, after we've shared kind of the learnings from today with you, then Maddie, Phil and I can go together and sort of organize and arrange like another incorporate some of that into another session. Like we can sort of speak to our individual experience to try and answer some of these questions, but then also design a workshop in which we can go through this in a bit more detail. So what I was going to propose is that Phil gives us a little bit of a sort of a background and context on what causes food waste on farms, and that presentation, and then we can just spend so that would take us up to about 11:30, and then anyone who wants to ask us some questions, we'll just have a sort of open Q&A. Maddie, Phil and I are happy to stay till 12 o'clock. If anybody needs to get away at 11:30, absolutely fine. But I think that would probably be the best way to go about it.
Yeah, I think that sounds good, James.
Brilliant. Okay, so would you like me to share my screen, Phil?
Yeah, or I can share mine and flick through them.
Okay, yeah, that's easier.
Okay. So we thought it would be useful to just do a quick rundown of the key causes of food waste on farms, since gleaning is basically a means of intercepting surplus produce at the farm level. So there's a lot of other organisations that do stuff at other stages in the food chain, but gleaning's unique offering is that it's basically agricultural surplus food. So you can sort of divide that into two main categories, the picked stuff and the unpicked stuff. So the picked stuff we'd refer to as a pack house collection, and that basically means that the farmer has done the work to harvest it, it's in their barn or it's somewhere on their site, and basically you're going to collect it. In some cases you might have to sort it because it might have some damaged stuff within it if it's been there for some time, but sometimes you're literally just collecting it. So that's just one distinction at the offset, that we sort of think of surplus as being either pack house or more commonly in the fields. And obviously the latter version, when it's in the fields, when we need to do the gleaning, that requires more volunteers and more hands on the land, and it's also more fun. So with that distinction in mind, I'm going to run through some of the main causes that we've encountered of why farmers have surplus, and we can talk a bit about it at the end. The number one cause you might be aware of already is cosmetic standards. A lot of growers produce to specifications in terms of the size of the produce, or its colour, or its shape, and often that grading takes place in the fields. So teams of harvesters, commercial harvesters, will move through an orchard, for example, at great speed, and they'll have a little sizing ring connected to their picking basket, and they can offer that up to the produce and see if something's too big or too small, and they'll leave behind the stuff whilst working very quickly, leave behind the apples that don't fit to that size. They might also just leave stuff behind because they're working so quickly. But there's a bit of cosmetic grading that happens both in the fields and then also in the pack house, and that can lead to surpluses that are available for donation. There's been a lot of campaigning around this. Feedback's campaigned on it. A lot of other organisations have as well. And a lot of supermarkets are now introducing new lines of wonky produce. There's also new box schemes like Odd Box that are trying to find new markets basically for this grade 2 or grade 3. You sometimes hear it referred to. Produce that isn't basically what people expect to see when they go into a supermarket and see rows of perfectly straight courgettes, because anyone who's grown food knows that it doesn't always come out like that. So that's reason 1, cosmetic standards. Reason 2, labour shortages, and that's a big topic of discussion. Historically, farm labour has always been undervalued and something that hasn't been financially incentivised, and it's often not seen as a career path for young people to move into farm work, despite the enjoyment and well-being benefits and multiple good things that exist within working in agriculture. This was really kind of brought into focus in the UK with Brexit, with a key thing being the way the currency exchange rates meant that basically European workers who would come over for a season would end up taking home a smaller pay packet than they did before Brexit, mainly just due to the pound's exchange rate with the euro changing. So we saw in 2017 and 2018 and 2019 lots of farms short on staff, and that basically means they couldn't bring the full harvest in. And that labour shortage is also something I'll touch on shortly with regard to COVID. So that might be a reason that you speak to farmers and find out that they have crops they can't pick. Another reason of surplus at farms is sort of market dynamics, when you see an oversupply that isn't matched by demand. And in some sense, you can really sympathise with this issue taking place, because farmers are always going to err towards producing a little bit more than they need, basically because for commercial reasons they would rather have a little bit too much than a little bit too little. But because of all the unpredictable variables within growing crops, weather conditions, consumer habits, other things that might come about that are unpredictable, there can sometimes be big gluts of produce, and at moments when supply of a particular crop is very high in the seasonal cycle, the value of that is going to fall. So just pure kind of market dynamics mean that in October, when lots and lots of farms are selling apples, the gate price that farmers receive for apples is going to be pretty low, and as a result, the margin that they have for their labour costs or other costs that they face versus the cost they're going to receive for selling it is sometimes going to be so small that it's negative, that it's not worth them paying for their teams to do the harvesting. So that can sometimes lead to produce getting left out. The next one, James hinted earlier about the issues within the sort of I guess you could call it the monopolization that supermarkets have of our fresh produce sector, where the 10 main supermarkets control over 95% of vegetable trading, fruit and veg trade. Historically, this has been a really big issue with the power imbalance that supermarkets have over small companies that are reliant on their custom. So how has that happened? Well, supermarkets might, worst case, be very irresponsible and cancel orders that farmers were expecting to receive. They might put pressure on the suppliers, on the growers, by potentially penalising them if they don't deliver as forecast. So they might get a lower price if they don't grow as much as they said they were hoping to. They could be slow with their payments. They might delist their suppliers. And this is something that in the UK has become a bit less of an issue, as the Groceries Code Adjudicator, who are like the ombudsman for this sector, has got a little bit more, better in recent years at kind of calling supermarkets to account, and also the campaigning sort of sector has got a bit kind of more clear about where supermarkets are going wrong. But it's still very much an issue at the global level, and organisations like Tradecraft are calling for better trade relations for producers in the developing world. So unfair trading practices can, in some instances, lead to industrial scale food waste. The picture of parsnips there is a farm in Norfolk. They were expecting to be sold and they weren't. So that's a further cause. And then the kind of unexpected events that can occur can also lead to waste. So that might be to do with weather. Heavy rain can damage cherries or other soft fruit in a way that farmers might struggle to sort of see enough value in harvesting them. Heat waves can lead to crops all ripening at the same time and farmers struggling to have sufficient outlets. There can also be issues with pests being attracted by weather, and basically there's so many variables within growing a crop that weather can really affect how things, the way things turn out, and the ability of a crop to be all ready to be sold at the moment that it's ripe. And obviously, in relation to unexpected events, the coronavirus crisis this year was a major kind of risk of producing food waste in a way that was mostly in relation to the labour force, and whether the Eastern European farm workers that we rely upon to pick up produce would be able to travel over. And then alongside that, there was a Pick for Britain campaign to recruit UK workers who could be on furlough from their other jobs and draw a second income from farm work. So back in March, you would remember a lot of news stories around coronavirus. Is it going to leave lots of food rotting in the fields? And there were big fears basically over a huge shortage of the couple of 100,000 farm workers we required. And actually we haven't seen it hasn't really happened in the way that we feared it would. In the States, there were lots of instances of crops being ploughed back into fields. America having a much bigger food service and catering sector than we do. A lot of what happened in the UK was farmers reorientating quite quickly their outlets. So James mentioned a farmer who sold all their produce to restaurants and cafes, setting up a veg box scheme and doing more direct sales. So it was quite interesting to see a lot of businesses pivot their market very quickly. And of course, everybody eating at home means that retail sales soared. So there was much high demand from supermarkets and other retailers to buy in fresh produce. So what we actually saw where I'm based in Sussex is that farmers had less surplus than they might have otherwise, because there was a high demand for what they were growing, and just general more need for fresh produce. So that's basically just a quick overview, because we thought it'd be useful in the first session to go through some of the key causes, and I think a lot of those will relate beyond the UK sector as well, for those who are joining us from the Southern Hemisphere. But essentially that was just a quick rundown of some of the causes, and hopefully that's helpful for you when speaking to farmers to get a sense of why they might have crops that they're not able to sell and might be willing to donate. There is, of course, sometimes human error that leads to food waste on farms, but it is worth emphasizing that farmers are the very last people that want to see their crops go to waste. So they do everything they can to get it to market. Their livelihoods depend on it, and they're often the most upset if food does go to waste. So I think that human error isn't really something that we consider to be a major cause. So that's it for my quick presentation. We did have plans for a further breakout, but I'm aware that it's gone past 11:30 when we expected the session to wrap up. So in light of that, I think it might be worth us skipping this breakout and moving on to the Q&A. I don't know what you think, James and Maddie, about that.
Yeah, I can jump in there, Phil. Yeah, I think that's a sensible thing to do. Can you move us on to the next slide?
Yep.
Cool. So yeah, I appreciate everybody's already stayed a little bit later. We were, as often happens with these things, rather ambitious in what we might be able to achieve in the time frame. But I wanted to just first of all take this opportunity to thank you all, really for sharing sort of the difficulties that you're sort of coming up against, or you expect to come up against, in what can be it's a challenging time, it's a challenging set of circumstances. So I just wanted to kind of thank everyone for being brilliant and being respectful and thoughtful. I thought, as I said, we're happy to stay for a little bit longer to ask some questions. So that can either be a case of you could pop your hand up and ask them in person now, or we can or you can type in the chat. But I just thought it would be nice to give an opportunity for just sort of a bit of a checkout, really. So you can sort of do it. Anybody can sort of jump in and contribute if they've got a couple of words about maybe how they're feeling, about I'm personally feeling, if I take the liberty of going first, I'm feeling pretty inspired by the number of people and the amount of energy that people are bringing to this, and I feel like the opportunity for different conversations to have between you is going to be fantastic. But yeah, just wanted to give anybody the opportunity, either in the chat box or whatever, to just share how they're feeling. I'm seeing Kevin's hand up.
Would you mind stopping your screen share, Phil, just so that we can see each other for this last?
Yeah, good idea.
Bit. That would be lovely. Thank you. Yeah, sorry everybody that we've overrun a little bit. Thank you for staying with us. It took us a while to get going at the beginning. So yeah, we'll just have a bit of a checkout round, and hopefully we'll see you all, or most of you, next week as well. Just to say that it's 10 till 12:30 next Wednesday, focusing on working with volunteers and sharing up the food. So going into more depth about the how-tos of gleaning, including recruiting, managing and safe supervising of volunteers, and the practical and logistical aspects of distributing the food. So that's a lot of those questions came up in your discussions, and I've logged them in the feedback. So a lot of those questions can be delved into and answered during the session next week and the week after, focusing on farmers. So thank you, Susie, if you've got to shoot off. And yes, let's have any final comments or feedback from anybody.
Cool. So we'll go Kevin first, and then I saw Mariam raised her hand as well.
Thank you, James and Maddie. Yeah, I did put the question out there, and I was very interested to hear a little bit about Joy's experience of actually taking stuff they've gleaned and turning it into potentially a higher value item, if you like, and then using it to fundraise, to subsidise other activity and things. That was interesting model to explore, and wonder whether others have tried that as well. And yeah, as well as distributing the Glean produce out to organisations who can use it, to actually use it yourself to do something with it is an interesting idea.
What exactly did you want to know about, Kevin? Is there anything I can expand on for you?
Well, I've picked up from what you're saying that I guess you're making juice. Is it fruit juice of some sort?
Yes, we make a pure juice from the apples. One of our members went to Pershore College, which has got a press. It's a commercial press, but they pretty well do it at cost for us. Plus the farm that we gleaned from the last time had also got a press and offered to do the pressing for us. In fact, they subsidised the cost, which is very, very good of them. We started quite small. We didn't glean very many apples the first time, and found it quite difficult to sell. But in the local area, people have got to know refugees, particularly through local churches, and the mosque. We've sold a lot through that. But very, very recently, we've started breaking into farmers markets and some more niche places that sell high value produce. So it's a long-term project, I would say, for people, so they get to know exactly what they're buying, because we sell for about £3 a bottle, and our cost for making a 750ml bottle is about £1.35. So you can see that when you put all your logistics in, it isn't making a huge profit. So some commercial retailers want to buy it for about £1.50, and we can't do that, which is why we've had to hang back with sending it into some places, and we found that sending it ourselves through churches, as I say, and other establishments, that type has been better.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you, Joy. Thanks, Joy. I guess just to share a reflection on that, there are there's the setup that's required to sort of make certain types of product can be quite labor intensive and quite sort of health and safety conscious, anything that you're kind of putting in jars for selling. So it's definitely worth, in the spirit of collaboration, there may be sort of local organizations that are in more of, have the capacity, that are already building lines of certain products, and that's something that you could kind of feed into there. It does mean that you're less likely to have full control over it, but you know, it's definitely something that might be able to help with that. Okay, Mariam, I'd like to give you the opportunity to share now.
Okay, good afternoon, all everyone, and
Hello.
thank you for this meeting. I just wanted to generally ask, because I'm an individual that works with a group of with a local charity that feeds the homeless community. Besides from Home Room, there's another community, there's another organization I work with. There's a lot of women, for example, the Asian Muslim origin, a lot of that cook from home. And the idea is that we have like a WhatsApp group. We have a weekly menu, we cook from home, voluntary base, and then other volunteers come and collect food from our houses and then distribute to the homeless community. So I'm just wondering, is it possible, is there a way where we can receive like these gleaning producers, you know, like direct, rather than purchasing vegetables? Is there any way we can have access to the vegetables from farms and deliver it to volunteers who probably cook from home, and that food goes back into the community so the food doesn't get wasted? Just a question.
Great stuff. Thank you for sharing, Mariam. Can I just ask whereabouts you're based?
Yeah, I'm based in East London, in Waltham Forest.
Snap. So yeah, a great example. I mean, there's also a group based in Walthamstow here in the Hornbeam Cafe that Petra and I'm just trying to see who else is involved, and Karen, yeah, and Susie.
I think Mariam's part of that group.
Yeah, I'm part of that as well. But I mean, the group I'm talking about now is called Serving Humanity, and they're based in Ilford and Redbridge area. And so what they do is that they have they work with Salvation Army, and you know, so the women volunteer cooking this cooking team. they cook a weekly menu, and then other volunteers collect the food from the houses, and then the food gets distributed at the Salvation Armies where the homeless communities are staying, or like other needy homes. But that's based in Redbridge and Ilford area, for example. So.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess one thing to point out is that there are sort of a number of different ways in which you could be involved in this. It sounds more as a sort of a recipient organization. That's definitely, there's quite a lot of produce that can flow into London when there are community gleaning groups taking place there. So I guess it's just a case of, I can definitely facilitate introductions to some of the redistribution organizations that we already work with, places like the Felix Project and Fairshare. But there's also, there's kind of possibilities in terms of linking up with other community gleaning hubs that might be interested in setting up in London as well. So yeah, there's definitely, it would be a case of just finding a place where that produce could be delivered to, that would be convenient for you to collect from, or whether there's a way of sort of organizing some delivery to that. But yeah, definitely something that can be explored more.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Charmaine?
Hi, so I just had a question. So again, following on from Joy, who they're doing the pressed juice. I work, as I said, with enterprise students, and as part of their courses, they start up micro businesses. So this academic year, which we had to put on hold, we had an apple juice, a group of our boys who were going to start an apple juice business, and there's other ideas out there, and myself, I'm developing an idea as well around condiments. So my question is, so I'm obviously used to going to community glean, spend the day, and then that gets taken away by Felix Project, deal with it, and etc. But if I wanted to use the produce to make condiments, which will be commercial and earning a profit, how does that work with farmers? Is there a link to farmers that you pay, a fair price for the produce, or is it, because normally when you go to community volunteer, you can take your spoils, but if I'm taking them to make something that would potentially be sold, what kind of arrangements could be put in place? Because obviously there's organisations like Ruby in the Rubble and other organisations that are doing these things, but I just don't know what the behind the scenes agreements are. Was that clear? It's a bit of waffle there.
Great question. Phil?
Yeah, Charmaine, I can reply to this because I think it's a really interesting consideration, and it's something that I'm trying to work on as well down in Sussex, setting up some processing and adding value. One of the issues, as you touched on, is that you're changing the proposition to the farmer, in that previously on a gleaning day, they would be doing something that's wholly charitable, and they're basically giving produce, and us as gleaners, we're going to gather it, collect it, and we're just a sort of we're doing the legwork really of doing the harvesting, transporting it, and then giving it away. I mean, Joy's case is a bit of an exception in that role, and what you're trying to sort of set up is also slightly changing that model. And I think it's basically what it comes back to is the relationship that you have with the grower, which has always got kind of centering around trust, and them thinking that what you're, having an understanding of what you do and buying into what you do. You've really got to have that relationship with the farmer where they see the value in what you do. And so if your activity is more than simply donating it as soon as you glean it, I'd say you've got to invest in the relationship with the producer, whether that means, sharing with them some of the processed stuff, so they get to taste some of their own crops through your adding value to it, or just taking the time to explain to them what you're doing and why it's beneficial. I think that's a good way of doing it. So sort of really focusing on that relationship and the trust that you have with the producer. So they still feel like that they're making a donation that has charitable benefits.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, just to expand on that, I guess it's like, the absolute key is transparency. Because I think if you, the reality is, if you're gleaning 10 tons of produce, will all of that be going to that processing? It might only be a proportion of that.
Yeah, exactly. Very small proportion. Yeah.
Exactly, and I think and also I think it's about the scale of the scale and the nature of the business as well. You'll be setting this up as a social initiative, which is designed to teach young people in a disadvantaged area how to set up businesses. It's that's slightly different to a large scale commercial juice maker who might have, I guess the reason that transparency is important is because you might have a much larger scale organization that's kind of got into using wonky produce or whatever because they haven't identified a marketing opportunity and cheap or free product from a farmer. So as long as it's clear to the farmer which that's not who you are, which is clear that you're not, you know, from the way that you organize explain the project, I think broadly it's fine.
Yeah, but I think, I'll take that away. It's that relationship and transparency, and farmers need to see the value. So thank you. Thanks very much.
And for those of you that aren't necessarily working just directly with the students, it's very important that transparency also extends to the volunteers and the other people that are participating on the Gleaning Day with you. So as much as possible, having clarity about where the produce is going is going to make everybody feel like they've contributed to a cause that they're comfortable with. Great.
I wonder if we're just coming into the last few minutes before 12. So I just wondered if there was any kind of last comments people wanted to make. We'll share everything that the recording. We can share the slides. I'm not sure if we've got everyone's emails, so perhaps if you bung your email in the chat, and if your name isn't in your email, you can put your name next to your email in the chat. Anyone who'd like to receive.
I think if you've registered via Eventbrite, we will have received your email.
Okay.
So if you haven't registered via Eventbrite, you can put your email in the chat.
Cool.
Just to add on that, sorry to interject, Maddie, that's if you're happy for, I think there's potentially real benefit in all of you being connected and being able to share resources, especially so Kevin, there's some examples of groups in Cornwall, Charmaine and Stephen both working in Kent, the groups working in East London as well. If you're happy for your emails to be shared among each other, then we can kind of do that, then pop them in the chat, or or maybe if you're not happy for me to share them, then do let us know. Just counting the number of thumbs on my screen now. Brilliant.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Just earlier we realized we don't really have a contact email for you guys. Who is best to contact? Because everything has come through Eventbrite, and then I think Claudia at feedback was one of the emails that was listed. So if we wanted to contact you, if you wanted us to contact you,
please, we would love you to. Yeah, I think that's the person who owns our Eventbrite subscription. It's just like, sorry if there's a bit of confusion with that.
Shall I put? It was also in the detail in the Eventbrite, sort of the main bit about with all the content. It was at the bottom of there. I think Phil and James's emails were there. Shall I just put them in the chat as well?
Yeah, I'm definitely happy to be contacted about all of this. I would say maybe you could contact me and then have Phil in CC. That might make sense.
Yeah, one of us will get back to you on it for sure.
Yeah, we can hold each other accountable for that in that case. Cool. Any further questions or reflections or sharings, musings?
Could I just ask how many of you have signed up to other sessions? You just put your hand up. There's 3 more coming. Okay, great. I'm going to, if you haven't and want to, I'm just going to repost the Eventbrite link, but I just need to check that that's all set up properly for the next one after we close this off. So maybe just give us till tomorrow to check that that's all working properly before you register for other ones. Fantastic. Thank you all so much for your contributions, being here and attentive to each other on the journey.
Yeah, it's been great to have a real geographical spread from Melbourne to Johannesburg and Aberdeen to Cornwall and Teesside. We've covered a fair bit of ground, I think.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you all. And yeah, don't hesitate to, I know that there's a certain level of urgency in certain communities to kind of get going with this. So don't hesitate to ping us a message kind of in advance of next week, just to explore some of these ideas and some of the barriers a little bit more. We're going to try and do a little bit of work analysing some of the stuff that we got from that board. And then, you know, that's going to inform the content of the next sessions. And we're going to try our best to sort of start making the connections that are going to kind of help make this happen. Beautiful.
Great.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks a lot. And,
Thank you.
Okay.
See you all
See you
soon.
next time.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.